Hey, how's it going? Quick disclaimer before this video starts, cause I can't let you go in without a little bit of a warning. I think this video is perfectly fine and watchable and enjoyable, but you should know I did record it on my mobile phone. It's the only camera I have available to me, and due to that, the audio it's a bit surround soundy in terms of sometimes I come from your left earphone and sometimes I come from your right earphone. And I'm not trying to scare you off the video. I do think it's fine, but I just wanted to make you aware of that fact. I hope it doesn't bother you too much because I had a lot of fun making this video and I think hopefully it should be a fun time. It's a little disorienting, especially going from this microphone into the phone microphone, but trust me, you get used to it after like a minute. So without further ado, hey, how's it going? Today I want to do a quick video, I don't know how quick, where I go through my bookshelf or my bookcase and I show you every single graphic novel or adjacent graphic novel style book that I own, just because it's fun. I just want to show you what I've got. The main thing I've got to tell you though is I kind of dabbled with collecting physical comics, like trade paperbacks, oh god, probably a decade ago now. And I didn't get too far into that because then I discovered Marvel Unlimited and then later DC Universe Infinite launched, and that has been the bulk of how I have read comics over the last many years. However, I recently have been kind of like rediscovering the love of physical comics, and so yeah, there's not going to be a huge like amount. This isn't going to be one of those videos that goes on for like hours and hours and hours. I just thought it would be cool to show you what I've got so far because I do want this collection to grow. I don't really have room for it to grow right now, if I'm being honest, but I do want it to grow nonetheless, and I think it would be cool to look back on this video in years to come and kind of go, hey, that's nice. Also, I do want to do this video for novels and paperback books and hardback books and that kind of stuff. That will be a longer video, but I'm really excited to do that video. I don't have time to do that video right now, but I do have time to do this one, so let's get on with it. And I do have one thing to tell you if you're not already aware with the channel. And I'm not going to show every single one, but the bulk of my physical comics collection comes in the form of these books. DC Comics The Legend of Batman by Eagle Moss Collections, a now defunct company. When I was in my early 20s, I had some disposable income and I saw this subscription magazine type thing where you would subscribe to this. £20 a month would get you 2 of these books a month. And looking back on it now, that's a pretty cost-effective way to collect a lot of Batman comics. But that's why when we go through this collection, I don't really have Batman trade paperbacks. I did have some New 52 for a while, but I gave them to a friend because that was all collected in this collection as well. But yeah, it might look like a bit of a cheaper way of collecting some of these comics, and I know a lot of comic collection is all about owning them in some really nice looking formats like, you know, omnibuses and absolute editions and stuff like that. I don't have any of that, at least not at the time of recording. It's not really within my budget, but this had, oh god, I'm gonna have to look it up. So while I extended the run, I cancelled towards the end of the original when it was supposed to end point. So I have 85 of these books, the 81 original weeks. Actually, I think they did add Dark Detective before, so it was 80 original weeks plus 81 is Dark Detective. And then I also have, let me go get it for you, these 4 chunkier, slightly more nice-looking hardbacks of Batman Eternal, which was an 80th anniversary run, I believe, of comics. It does have like sleeves and stuff, and I'm really excited to get around to reading these actually, because like they are a little bit chunkier. I've got part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. I did not look at these, or I have not looked at these since I first got them, really. There's also Batman and Robin Eternal. I didn't know a lot about comics at the time, and when they sent me Batman and Robin Eternal part 1, I remember sending them an angry message. I shouldn't have done this. I sent them an angry email being like, wow, okay, I thought we were wrapping this up, but clearly you've added extra months on without my consent. Well done. You got me. You got more money out of me. I would like to cancel this, and I regret doing that now because I would like those Batman and Robin Eternals and the extra volumes that they did. But, you know, hindsight is 2020. One of the perks of subscribing to the Legend of Batman Eagle Moss collection was that they did send this out after, I think it was like 3 or 4 months, which is a cover art collection. And it's nice to flip through. It's a slightly larger format than... Hang on, let's just grab Dark Victory here. Slightly larger format than the actual comics themselves, as you can see. And it just has some of the most famous and well-regarded covers from over the years. And yeah, that's just nice to have. It's just a nice little bonus. All right, now let me take you to my bookshelf itself, because down there it's all a mess, but here it's fine. I can show you this. So as you can see, we've got some more Legend of Batman stuff here. As you can see, I still haven't opened like a lot of it, like Nightfall here. But anyway, we'll go in order from left to right. As you can see, there's really not a whole lot to get through, but we got Flashpoint. I picked this up. I picked this up at a independent store, kind of like on a whim. Like, I just happened to be there and I saw it. I was like, oh, Flashpoint, that's a pretty big thing. This was before I really knew all that much about DC Comics and stuff. But yeah, sorry, Flashpoint. What I remember about it is it's not really the best comic to read when you're not that familiar with DC Comics, although it's not really the worst comic to read. We'll get to which the worst comic to read is when you're not familiar with the source material. But Flashpoint, my main issue with it was that it just starts like after like Barry Allen goes back in time and saves his mom and changes the universe. It just starts from there, from him waking up in the changed universe. And I always had this nagging sense of I didn't really understand why he did it or how he got into that situation in the first place. I would have liked this book to maybe open with that. Now, I really loved The Flash's CW show. I only ever got to see the first season. I know there's like a million seasons. I really do want to go back and watch them all at some point. But that's why I believe all of these New 52 books that you see here, I basically just had a birthday where I just asked everyone to get me New 52 books. So that's why I have varying amounts of each. I also had New 52 Batman, but like I said already, I gave that away after I got these versions. But yeah, I've heard bad things about this run, and I remember not great things about this run. I remember reading this, and obviously I was comparing it to the CW show, and it's quite different from the CW show. But I remember just not having a super great time with this. I remember thinking it was funny, but The Flash is the one I got the most of, and it's the one I enjoyed the least out of all the books that I got. Actually, no, sorry, I remember. I really wanted to get up to volume 4 specifically because it was called Reverse, and Reverse Flash was my favorite part of the Flash lore, or at least as presented in the CW show. Again, I remember not being too thrilled with how it panned out in this book, but I no longer have any memory of this book. I have since more recently been reading the Rebirth era of The Flash, and I was enjoying that a lot more. Then we've got New 52 era Superman, only 2 volumes of this, but I remember being surprised at how much I enjoyed this. I remember asking for it almost as kind of like I want to sample it, but I didn't expect to like it that much, and I think I did go ahead and read the entire New 52 run of Superman and Action Comics on DC Universe Infinite, but again, that was a few years ago now, and I don't really remember the specifics of things that happen in this book. I also remember really enjoying New 52 Justice League, which I did also end up reading through the entirety of on DC Universe Infinite. I know that people or some people hate the New 52 for like resetting like story arcs and stuff like that, but it really was a good jumping on point for new readers, and I was new readers, and there's some good stuff in here. Although now that I've read a lot of Rebirth era stuff, I kind of find it hard the prospect of going back to New 52, so I haven't revisited New 52 in a long time, so I kind of see where people are coming from on that front as well. Doctor Who. So I love this cover. I remember back when I was active on DeviantArt, I actually saw this. I don't know if it was this specific illustration, but the artist who makes these covers and these illustrations, I actually saw their work before they were hired by who makes this comic? Is it Titan Comics? So yeah. Here's the thing. I love Doctor Who. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. The 10th Doctor is one of my favourite Doctors. I don't like this book. I have issues with it. It feels like a caricature of the Doctor, and I didn't find the stories within to be all that interesting. But I know that it's continued on. I recently learned that actually there's a fair few of these books now. And I don't know if they get better. I've never tried the 11th Doctor stuff or the 12th Doctor stuff. I do want to try it at some point in the future. But yeah, I always look at this. Maybe I need to reread it. I don't know how it was received by the masses. But I remember reading through this and just kind of being a little disappointed. Next up, we've got Vader here. Now, there are a few runs of Darth Vader comics that take place during different time periods of the Star Wars lore, and I do kind of get them mixed up in my head because I have read a lot of them, but this is the one that takes place between Episode 4 and Episode 5. I think it was the first kind of Marvel Darth Vader run that they did, and it's very, very good. You meet Aphra in it, who becomes a fan favorite character. You've got kind of like these dark versions of like the like R2D2 and C3PO droids. They obviously have their own names. It's been a while, I don't remember, but I remember greatly enjoying this. I think I read the entire run on Marvel Unlimited after the fact as well. This is kind of a running theme of me like starting a series physically and then going, that's expensive to continue, so I'm just going to read it digitally, but I'm happy that I own at least part of it physically. Also, as I'm like going through this collection, I'm like, is this the most basic bitch collection that someone can have? Let me know, I guess, but be nice about it, please. But yeah, I don't exactly have a lot of deep cuts or a lot of like, like underrated stuff. And it is mostly DC and Marvel as well. But hey, it's what I've got at the minute. Now on to some of the chunkier stuff. Civil War was the very first graphic novel that I ever owned. And that was a mistake because I did not know who most of the characters in this were. I was an MCU Andy. I was going to say I still am. I'm actually fallen way behind now. But I was an MCU Andy who picked up Civil War because it was all over the shelves in all of the bookshops. And I went, sure, I'm probably 18, 19, I don't remember. I'll get into comics. I'll pick up the most popular one. And I've heard it's a good story, but it's just not a great thing to start with. I should reread it at some point, although I'm not all that deeply invested in the Marvel comic universe right now, so I still think it would be a bad idea to read it now. But yes, it is a well-received story, I do believe. I think in general, though, I'm not much of an events guy. I never love, like, the big crossover events in comics, at least not in Marvel comics. If you don't mind, we're moving back over here because my hand muscles are actually getting quite tired. So, Marvel Platinum. For those of you who don't know what Marvel Platinum is, it was, I don't know if they still do them, but it was basically... and I think they've done tons of these under different names, but the idea is collect some of the most iconic issues of a run, or not a run, but like an entire, character, and put them into a book. So, for instance, Marvel Platinum Spider-Man goes through some of the earliest stuff. It's all the most iconic storylines. Obviously, you've got the death of Gwen Stacy. Pardon me. You've got Peter and MJ getting married. You've got, I really liked like the oh my god, it's been so long. The Morland stuff. Reading this stuff got me going, shit, I need to get into like modern comics, because at this point, this was super, super early in my comic reading. I was just reading Amazing Spider-Man from the very beginning. I was reading the earliest stuff. I think I read like the first 200 issues, every single one. And I'm really glad I did that, by the way. Obviously, I did that digitally. But yeah, I wanted to own some of this stuff. And yeah, it has one more day in here as well. Because while it might not be a very well-received story, it is an important one for the character, undeniably. Then they followed that up with Marvel Platinum Spider-Man Reloaded, where they loaded it up with more iconic stories, although, slightly less iconic because they already did the most important stuff. I remember being annoyed that, these two don't follow on one into the other, and I think I picked them up side by side, so I was kind of referencing between the two's contents to try and figure out which came in the right order in terms of publication. It's very funny that I was annoyed by that. I was clearly very new to comics at that point because this is obviously something that came later, and it would be very silly if they limited it to only being stories that came after what was in this collection. But yeah, for a while after Marvel Unlimited, I found myself thinking that it was silly owning these because I could just read them in Marvel Unlimited as part of my subscription. But of course, I'm past the concept of
digital subscriptions being the same as ownership in any way. And I'm really, really glad I own some of these stories physically because they are iconic and I love them. And speaking of iconic Marvel stories, Ultimate Spider-Man Ultimate Collection. This contains, oh, I don't know, a lot of it. A lot of the early stuff, all the way leading up to, this part, And I'm sure most people have, or at least aware of this series. It was definitely one of my earliest comic reads, and I'm very, very fond. I'm not really saying anything unexpected or new here, but this is an incredible series. I read all of it, of course, on Marvel Unlimited, including the Miles Morales stuff after he was introduced. That's also excellent. And yeah, I'm really glad I own this because, again, turns out physical comics are nice to have. Who would have thought? Now, if I was making this video like a month ago, 2 months, 3 months ago, that would have been the end of it. But I've just mentioned that I'm starting to get back into collecting actual physical graphic novel books, and what better way to do so than DC Compact Comics? If you've been following the channel, you know I love these things. You know that I've basically just started grabbing them when I can because they are affordable. They are in a really nice format. Obviously, we don't need to go over it all again, but obviously you do sacrifice, page size, and sometimes, you don't get as good of a look at the art as you might like. But it really doesn't feel like you're sacrificing anything unless you're like actually comparing it to the bigger comic size right there. When you're actually reading it, it doesn't really matter. So going in order of what I've picked up and very brief thoughts about each one. Batwoman Elegy is my first Kate Kane read, and I love it. I really want to read more from this character. Very compelling. Love the design. And yeah, great stuff. Up next, Far Sector, which is a completely standalone Green Lantern story. You don't need to know anything about DC Comics or even really Green Lantern to be able to read and enjoy this. It's just a cracking science fiction read, and it's great. Up next is Wonder Woman Earth 1, which I don't think is the best Wonder Woman story that you can read to start with, but it is the one I've read. I mean, I don't own any physical Wonder Woman beyond this, as you've seen, but I have, I have an understanding of a character from what I've seen in Justice League, and I have read some Absolute Wonder Woman, but, I definitely want to read more Wonder Woman. And this wasn't necessarily the direction I wanted to, but it does collect a lot. It collects all 3 volumes of Earth 1, and it is decent. It is a fun read, and, if you want that, you should go for it. Then I also picked up Batman The Long Halloween because all those Eagle Moss collection, graphic novels I showed you, for some reason they missed out The Long Halloween, even though it's one of the most iconic Batman stories out there. Boy, it would be crazy if they did that again, wouldn't it? But yeah, I've got a review for this coming out this Friday. Absolutely love it. Spoiler alert, absolutely love it. Cracking read again. Murder mystery, and it's like 80s era Batman, and it's just fantastic. It's exquisite. It's chef's kiss. Anyway, now to get to the ones that I've just recently ordered, this next batch. Almost forgot to grab it because I'm currently reading it, and that is Superman Birthright. You can see the bookmark there. That's how far through it I am. Obviously, I won't give my thoughts yet, but having a good time with it. And then the 3 volumes I have that I have not read yet, which would be Batman Hush. Again, I foreshadowed it. For some reason, Eagle Moss Collections didn't include this, even though it collected the sequels. I don't know what's up with that. And then Superman Batman, which I find just weirdly compelling as this peripheral graphic novel. And then also Wonder Woman Blood and Guts, because I'm committed to learning more about Wonder Woman. She's awesome. And this is the start of a New 52 run. So I will be going back to New 52, it turns out. And I've heard good things. And from what I've heard and from what I've read of a blurb, it's probably more up my alley than Earth 1 was. Wait a second. I also grabbed Daredevil Born Again. It's the only Marvel Comics Premier Collection edition I own so far. I've got a review for that up on the channel. Read it very recently, had a good time. Hey, look, it's a preview of the books video I'll eventually do, and a general impression as to why I'm not showing you my entire bookshelf, bookcase. I don't know why I get those 2 words mixed up, but it's a mess. Joker has stolen the Batmobile, and Batman is strapped to the top of it, if you were wondering. Now, that's it. That's the end of all the graphic novels I own in terms of comics and stuff. However, I did think it would be more appropriate in this video than in a general books video to go over the editions of manga that I own, because I do own some manga. I try to say manga because it's, you know, what it's actually called, but I will probably slip up and start calling it manga. But anyway, I read a lot of manga digitally as well, or I read a lot of manga digitally, but I do own some Bleach. I love Bleach. I may not have posted any Bleach content to the channel recently, but I was doing some Thousand Year Blood War reviews, and yeah, I own the first 15 volumes of Bleach in these omnibus editions, and I was reading manga. I was watching anime long before I ever got into comics. And I remember one of the difficulties I had when I got into comics was the difference in format and, you know, the way the story is told. This is a very linear story. It flows from start to finish kind of thing, whereas obviously comics are a bit more all over the place with their continuities. You know how it is. But yeah, I love Bleach so much, and obviously this is all black and white. That's what manga is, if you weren't aware, and you read it back to front instead of front to back. And this, I wish I had the entire collection, man. Obviously that's not feasible. I don't even know if this stuff is still in print because these books are quite old at this point, but yeah, love me some Bleach. The other full set of manga I have is a bit more niche, but it also pertains to the kind of review content I've made before. There is a young adult series called Cirque du Freak, also known sometimes as The Vampire's Assistant, also known as The Saga of Darren Shan. It was a popular young adult series in the UK around the time when I was a young adult, go figure, around probably, I guess, mid 2000s, late 2000s, early 2000s, you know what I mean. And so when I learned that there was a manga edition of this story, I was completely shaken. And for a long time, I couldn't get my hands on it. But a few years ago, they decided to reprint them as omnibus editions. So this says Volume 1, but it actually contains Volume 1 and Volume 2. Again, all nice, beautiful black and white art by Takahiro Arai. I've actually yet to read all of this. I was doing reviews per book, and I'm sorry that I fell off doing it. I do want to do it again. I think at this point I just need to wait until, you know, my mind is up for a reread, because starting midway through at this point would be a bit weird. But yes, we have Volume 1, which is 1 and 2. We have Volume 2, which is 3 and 4. We have Volume 3, which is 4 and 5. 5 and 6. We have Volume 4, which is 7 and 8. Oh, this is difficult. We have Volume 5, which is 9 and 10. And we have Volume 6, which is 11 and 12. Now, this one, unfortunately, I did not store very well, and it's a little bit bent. I really hate that I did that, but, you know, it goes that way sometimes. So I've been leaving it on the bottom of a great big stack of books in the hope of straightening it out, and it does seem to have worked a little bit at least. But yeah, very exciting to get around to reviewing these at some point on the channel. Also, fun fact, in the course of recording this video, I realized that this is what a size of manga, or a book of manga, is kind of supposed to be in terms of size. Obviously, the DC Compact comics are literally the same dimensions. I just realized that these Bleach omnibuses are a little short. They're a little bit smaller, which is kind of unexpected. You can't really see, but there you go. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I also just realized I forgot to talk about the story itself. If you're a fan of the idea of teenagers becoming soul reapers with the ability to summon swords which can transform and have personalities, this is your bag. And if you're interested in the story of a kid who ends up becoming a begrudging half vampire and the vampire's assistant, and the various travels they go on, I would recommend this as well. It's got a very unique take on vampires. It's got a lot of stuff about honor. It's also, I would say, I've said this before, it's not necessarily like front and center, but as like a very quick, just give you an impression of what the vampires are like in this book. They're kind of more like pirates. Like, they don't sail the high seas or anything like that. And they don't rob people. Like I said, they're very honorable. Honor's a very big deal. But just in terms of like, they're rough, they're brawly, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's quite a unique take. Here's the original Cirque du Freak book, the first of a 12-book series, if you were
interested in seeing that, I will go over it in more detail in an actual novels bookshelf series. But yeah, they're small books. They're like 200 pages, not even that. And yeah, that's what they look like. Or at least that's what they used to look like. They've got swanky new covers now. This has actually got a brand new cover this year for the 25th anniversary edition. I want it. Oh, but we're not done with the manga section of this video yet. You see, I am a Pokemon fan, and when I learned that the Pokemon series had a manga which was separate from the anime, and which I heard maybe wasn't more quote-unquote mature, but like had more of like a narrative angle to it, I was very interested in it. I picked up the box set of the original kind of like Gen 1, however you say it, series, right? Except here's the problem. I don't know where Volume 1 has gone, and I cannot find it anywhere. And I do not want to buy it again, because if I do, I will immediately find it, and that's just going to annoy me. So, I have not read this, but I really, really want to. But yeah, it's an old manga at this point, but, you know, I love Pokemon, and I'm looking forward to reading this at some point. Lost a bit of a recording here, but it's just me saying that we are now going to be delving into the world book section of this bookshelf tour, which is more like coffee table style books with lots of art in them detailing the lore of various worlds from video games and books and TV shows and stuff like that. Thought this would fit better here than in a general novel video, you know? Okay, so first of all, we've got Warcraft Chronicle Volume 1, 2, and 3. I will show you the covers of each in a moment. Excuse me, these are quite big and heavy and unwieldy. But I really, really like these books. I've since seen books which do it better. We will get to them. But I really loved these heavy tomes which just tell you the history of World of Warcraft and give you various maps and stuff. Well, not even World of Warcraft, but Warcraft as a franchise. They're just beautiful books, and they weren't my absolute first. In fact, I should show you my absolute first, because it was a World of Warcraft one. Is it on the bookshelf? It is. Okay, good. But yeah, I love these things. There is a fourth one. I do not own Volume 4. I've heard bad things about it. I've heard that it retcons a bunch of stuff from the first 3 volumes and has some lore inaccuracies. I do want it nonetheless. I'm just less invested in World of Warcraft than I once was. I say that despite still playing it a ton. So Chronicle Volume 2 has Gul'dan on the cover and has more of like a fell green look to it. And then Volume 3 has Tyrande on the cover and has more of like an arcane blue to it. So yeah, that's the Warcraft Chronicles. And these books smell amazing, by the way. You should sniff them. Give them a sniff. Give them a sniff right now. But before Warcraft Chronicle, there was World of Warcraft, the Ultimate Visual Guide by DK Books of all things, which means it looks more like a kind of encyclopedia like that you would expect from other types of things, but the lore in this is kind of outdated at this point. I haven't looked for it in a very long time, but some people do still reference it for like lore drops and stuff that remain in the game to this day, so you know, it's kind of fun to have. It does annoyingly stick out on the bookshelf because it's a little bit wider than the Chronicles, but I am glad that I still have it, even though it is clearly of an era. More recently, Blizzard have been doing these Exploring Azeroth books, which are more encyclopedia-like. They are literally exploring the world of Azeroth, recontextualized for modern times, because, you know, the locations within this book in-game are represented during a time period which is, you know, like, I don't know now, like 15 years earlier in-game or something like that. And these kind of have their own style to them. They're a little bit more artsy than the Warcraft Chronicles were. They have depictions of armor sets and stuff in them, and they also have like this narrative through line. I don't know if it's like them for all of them, but I have 2 of these books, and both of them have had correspondence between 2 characters, so you get kind of like a meta-narrative as we're exploring whichever part of the world we're exploring in these books. And yeah, it's not all like this. There are some like full color pages as well. I don't know if I'll be able to land on any of them as I'm flipping through here, but it is, I just love like the pagerly, that's not a word, but that kind of like art style. It's gorgeous. And the other one I own was hiding here all along. I actually got this recently. I got it for my birthday. So in terms of chronological order, this is much more recent than this one, but chronological order doesn't actually matter for these, which is quite nice. You can just kind of pick them up and have a look. This one is based on the Legion expansion. It's the Broken Isles and stuff. And yeah, again, it's correspondence between 2 characters in certain points. And lots, there you go. Full color artwork.
right here. Lots of lovely artwork in these books, which is why I love them so much. I would own more of these, but they're expensive and they come out too quickly for me to just casually pick up as they do. And speaking of the art of World of Warcraft, I know, I told you, I like WoW. Yeah, I own this book. I can't remember if this was part of like the 15th anniversary stuff or not. I don't think so, because it only goes up to Warlords of Draenor. Also, I found out turns out it does matter how you store even like your hardback books, and I'm kind of bummed out now because you've got kind of like this wrinkle all the way throughout the book. We've got a bit of spine damage here, which is a little bit gutting, but it's not too impeding on the actual artwork itself. Absolutely beautiful artwork in this book. I will say though, I don't know if I'm one for art books in general after having picked this up, because while it's cool to look at and stuff, I don't find myself like picking it up and flicking through it very often, you know? I like stuff with some more words in it, I think, and there's a precious few of those in here, but I'm really glad I do own this. And finally, for World of Warcraft, just because we're here already, it's not strictly like a book thing to show off, but I'm really chuffed with this. This isn't my original battle chest, but I did own this exact thing back in the day. It got lost in moving, and I remember it was like not in good condition either, but my dad found one out in the wild and I bought it off of him, and I'm so glad I did, because it comes with these 2 game guides from Brady Games, which is just an absolute time capsule to look at, and in itself has some artwork and stuff, you know, there's maps and stuff. To be fair, the maps are there for like guide purposes, and you have some like in-game screenshots and stuff, and yeah, I'm really glad that I own this little piece of World of Warcraft history, and very fond of it, very sentimental. Here's a code to try WoW for 10 days. I doubt it still works, but you're welcome to try. Next up, we have RuneScape, the first 20 years in illustrated history, which is kind of more to do with the actual development of the game, but I do believe that there's some stuff to do with the lore of the game itself. It's just kind of always weaved in with the story of how the lore came to be, and like the creation of like the map and stuff, and how the game evolved over the years, and how it almost died several times due to poor decision making. You know, RuneScape's always kind of going through it in that sense. Wish I could say it wasn't anymore, but you know, it do be that way. This is the only RuneScape thing I own. But hey, remember when I said that there is a world book, a lore book, that does it better than Warcraft Chronicle? I was talking about Encyclopedia Eorzea, which is the Final Fantasy XIV equivalent. I own Volume 1, and I own Volume 2, and they are incredible. They are so gorgeous inside. There is so much lore. The text is so small. There is so much amazing artwork. And, you know, this one, the first one, covers A Realm Reborn and Heavensward. This one covers, I believe, just Stormblood by itself. And then there's another volume which covers Shadowbringers and maybe Endwalker. I'm not quite sure. And I really want the 3rd volume. But I won't lie, there's a bookmark in this one because it is weighty in terms of word count and stuff, and while it's fascinating reading the history of Limsa Lominsa and stuff, it's also not the kind of thing that's riveting to pull you back in, but I'm so glad that I own these tomes. They're probably my favorite out of my entire world book collection. But it's not all MMOs. Here we have a lore book for Skyrim, which basically collects in-game books into this nice tome, where this one is called Volume 1, The Histories. I only own Volume 1, sadly. Nothing too crazy here in terms of like artwork and stuff. There's a nice map in the front. It's mostly just like, you know, stuff like this, and then like I really like the font and like the page background, and yeah, it's nice. But there's also like 2 more volumes of this I don't own. And then there's 2 Elder Scrolls Online volumes, so it's kind of part of the same series because it is the same world. And these are books that you will find in the MMO. Again, I only own the first book of this one, book 1, The Land. I think this one does have some more artwork in it, if I remember, yeah, which is quite nice. And again, it's kind of hard to just read through these books, but it is nice to own them and flick through them sometimes. And then there's a Diablo 3 one. There's also a few more Diablo 3 books like this. I believe there's a book of the Book of Adria or something, and the Book of Tyrael. I think Adria is the last one. Although they might have done Book of Lorath as well, maybe in preparation for D4. But yeah, this one has some really nice kind of artwork to it. I really love how this one looks. It's great. Oof. I'm running out of breath from talking too much, if you could not tell. We are almost there. Remember when I said I wasn't sure if I had any books specifically for a show? I do. This is Doctor Who. This is the Whoniverse. This was long before they started officially calling it the Whoniverse, by the way. But this is kind of a lore book which attempts to connect the show's entire, also some lovely art of Gallifrey here, by the way, but it attempts to connect the show's entire canon to itself. And if you know anything about Doctor Who, you will know how much of an impossible feat that is, because it contradicts itself so often. It's just constantly coming up with new stuff without caring about stuff that came before. But it also kind of serves as a history of the show, and kind of talking about some of the Doctor's greatest adventures and stuff like that. To my shame, I've not read most of this, and I'm worried about how out of date it might be by now. I know they've done new versions of this book, or at least this kind of a book. But yeah, I will read this someday. It's got kind of a weird, like, squidgy cover. I don't really know if that's coming up on camera, but yeah, I am really grateful that I own this book. Up next, the second and only ever art book I have bought, and that is The Art of Ratchet and Clank, because I was playing Ratchet and Clank 2, and one of the unlockables for that game, for playing enough of it, or I think for doing like a new game plus save, is you can view, actually it's Ratchet and Clank 1 maybe, you can view like the artwork of like the concept art and stuff. And when I realized there was an actual real life book that you could buy that had a lot of that stuff in it, I love this game series so much, so it was kind of an instant buy for me. This book also has a few more words about like the context of the development of the game and like the choices behind the art style and stuff than the World of Warcraft book did, so happy about that too. And last, but by no means least, The World of Ice and Fire, The Untold History of Westeros and the Game of Thrones. This, I think, was my very first world book, and I was super into the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I still am, by the way. I will happily watch Alt-Shift-X videos on that stuff for hours on end when I am in the mood, and this was the original book that really spawned my interest in the lore of the series. There are so many corners of the World of Ice and Fire that are just shrouded in mystery and intrigue, and I am so hooked on it. And I know we will never get the answers, not because George won't finish the book, but because they're the kinds of mysteries that aren't supposed to have answers. You're never supposed to know why Valyria exploded. You're never supposed to know what's going on with the lands of Ashai. And it's very titillating to learn that, like, oh, the northern lands of Westeros, the lands of Always Winter, there's theories that it might connect all the way around the globe to, like, these mysterious snowy lands to, like, the east of, I think it's Ashai, or maybe the Shadowlands or whatever beyond that. I forget. It's been a long time since I read through this now, but it is a cracking read, and I loved every second. There's also a lot of stuff in here that inspired House of a Dragon, although more accurately, there's a lot of stuff in here that got expanded into its own book called Blood and Fire, which in turn inspired House of a Dragon. If you can't tell, I'm still a massive fan of Game of Thrones, I don't care. But just one last thing, because we started this video with comics, and this is technically kind of like a world book, coffee table book sort of thing, if a bit smaller. But this is something I got for my birthday recently as well, and that is this nifty little book, The Periodic Table of DC, which is kind of a book which, it does kind of like this periodic table of like the different kind of powers in the DC universe and then the different characters which belong to each. And there's some nice artwork, and there's lore about each one, and so it's nice if I'm reading kind of like an ensemble cast book and I come across like a character that I don't know, I don't just have to Google it, I can go and refer to an actual book that I have that tells me about that character's origins and stuff. It will inevitably become outdated over time, but this is still a pretty recent book, so really glad I own this. But that really is going to do it. And if you can't tell, this has been a physically exhausting video to make. I wasn't quite expecting that, but because I didn't just want to show you my bookcase because of how much of a mess it is, and because there's books in different places around the place as well, I decided to kind of settle on this style a little bit more, where I pick up a book and I present it to you. My back hurts. I'm out of breath. I'm wheezy a little bit because some of this stuff had dust on it because life happens and things get dusty. Oh, I'm going to go have a rest. If you've enjoyed this video, thank you so much for sticking with it. I know it hasn't just been comic books all the way down, so I don't know how much of a broad appeal this video is going to have, but I have had a blast making it. I am now daunted at the prospect of making the novels video, which will be like easily twice or 3 times as long as this one, so don't expect that anytime soon. But this has been as fun to make as I thought it would be, and that makes me very happy. I missed one. Shit. Sorry, it's another World of Warcraft one. This one was sitting at the bottom of one of my TBR piles. This is Grimoire of the Shadowlands, which is a world book specifically based around the much maligned Shadowlands expansion. And you might wonder, Christian, why the hell do you own this? This this is far more invested than anyone should be in what is considered the worst World of Warcraft expansion ever. But I thought that expansion, a lot of its problems were not in the base ideas of the expansion in terms of like the setting and the lore of it. And I really like some of the setting and the lore of Shadowlands. And this was on sale for like 10 quid clearance not too long ago. I didn't pick it up back when it first came out. So I did actually end up picking this up. And I don't regret it because it is a pretty nice looking book. And I have read some of it and I do enjoy it. So yes, mostly because I got this on sale and it has some nice art inside. I don't regret this. Okay, that's it. That's everything that's not a novel that I own, I think, in terms of books. Oh my god, I don't know what the length of this video is, but this might have turned out to be more of a world books video than a comic book video. But hey, it is what it is. Thanks for checking it out. Please leave a like if you liked the video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought about any of this stuff. Subscribe for more reviews based around this kind of stuff that you've seen in the video already. And I will catch you in whatever I make next. I'm gonna go lie down.